Let me start with Devin, then I'll open it up to all of you. Making progress, and when I say that, I wish I could sometimes give you this just great bit of information. But progress this morning is sitting up in a chair. Progress is taking a walk. Progress, I guess he played Stan 2 games at Uno and beat him, which was coming from Dad. So I think that's progress. Last night, watched him and sat there and helped hold him up to watch him eat his dinner, which was not easy. And reality is setting in, obviously, that this is a long road with his injury. And again, the people have just been so great. But it's starting to really focus in. This is going to be a long process. And our players are seeing that. Certainly we're seeing it, but that fails in comparison to what the family sees. So hopefully he will continue to make progress. We get updates beginning of the day, the end of every day, and then certainly we see him throughout the day. And that's the update that I have with him. So there's no long-term update there. There's no what it'll be like tomorrow. It's really what I said the other day. You know, the little steps are the milestones. And I've been involved in some head injuries, you know, with players before, nothing to this extent, but you really do learn that those little steps, you can't get frustrated and you can't have high expectations, and the life lesson is you take nothing for granted, but the bottom line is that he is making progress, and we're going to hope that continues, so go right ahead.
Tom, how do you impress upon scholarship athletes that they have to act in a way that goes above and beyond the general student population?
You keep at it. Yeah, there's a quote one of our coaches found. I wish that I'd seen this at some other point, but he said the greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it has been accomplished. And that's by George Bernard Shaw. Maybe you've seen that. I'd never seen that. And to me, all you can keep doing is keep doing that. You have to keep putting it out there. You have to keep addressing it. And you're always going to play hindsight when anything happens. You know, at halftime you play hindsight's 20/20. After the game, I mean, the first thing you do when you jump into the films is you don't look at all the things that you did well, look at what you didn't do well. I mean, that's the way it is with communication in every area, and it is with strategies and things of that nature. But can never stop. And I've never been a part of it as an assistant coach I've been involved in college basketball now 28 years and 16 years now as a head coach, starting my 16th season as a head coach. Never been in a situation where I felt like we weren't trying to communicate enough. But there's very few times at the end of the year where you look at and say every bit of communication was adhered to. It isn't. But you just keep working at it to the very best that you can. And it is extremely hard, no matter where it is in college athletics, and I'm sure it's the same with high school. I have a high schooler. I'm sure it's the same thing with junior high, is when you are held to a different standard, all right, you do have to, it's a 24/7 standard you have to really work towards. And we have 24/7 responsibility, 24/7 accountability. That comes with it, but the young people, they don't have that back. And there's so many other people that they make their own choices now. I mean, I'm not saying this is this person's fault or that person's fault. I've never, going back to an assistant coach with Ralph Willard and Tom Izzo, we never let somebody put the blame on somebody else. I mean, the players, the people make the choices. So, but not everybody has the same standards, and they don't have the same responsibilities, and they certainly don't have the same notoriety. But you deal with it, and you constantly communicate it, and the most important thing is not just mine, okay? It's having a group of people, a staff of people that are doing that. And then you try to get the parents and the significant others in their life, whether it's grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever it is, to continue to be in the same message. And that's the key, because ultimately that's what it all comes down to. It really does come down to, they don't get this. You know, when they look out, they don't see me. They don't see the program a lot of times. Sometimes they don't even see each other. Okay, when I see them, all right? And this is just the way that it is. When you go through the recruiting process, whether you've known them a short time or whether you've known them an awful long time, when you look back at them, okay, you see them, you see their families. And I certainly don't want to see families like I had to see the other night, in the sense of me being in there first before they were, and then preparing them to see their son in that situation. So I've always believed that, and more than ever, that's the image that I have about communication and what you're trying to get across to people. That when you look back at them, you're not quite sure what they see, but you better see their families when you're looking back at them. And that's the most important aspect. And we can always, there's not one day, there's not one time period of a game or a practice or a session, or certainly when you have discipline or punishment, or when you have issues, or when somebody makes a mistake, even going back to what we had this summer, and when they make a mistake, you always, all right, that's where the parental part of it constantly comes in. You are always going to wonder about what you could have done better. And that's where the beat up is, because you constantly beat yourself up over that. But at the same time, you got to keep communicating, and you got to keep going with it, and you got to keep, you can't stop, and you've got to continue to have those people around you that can help you enlist that message best way possible.
Pete?
Tom, and I know you don't always like to get specifics in terms of discipline, but is this a situation now where almost zero tolerance needs to happen?
I'm not sure that what I really understand what zero tolerance is. And you're a parent, right?
Yes, oh yeah.
I'm a parent too. I don't really know what that means. I know this, okay? I know if I could go back and do something over on Friday night, okay, after a very good practice, and 20 to 30 minutes talking about what we weren't gonna do, all right? And you know what I wish I'd have done? I wish I'd have scheduled practice later that night. The rules say you get to, I'm not joking.
No, I believe it.
Okay? The rules say you get to practice till midnight. That's it. Then you can't go again till the next morning at 5. All right? If I could go back and do it over, we'd have practiced till 11:30 midnight, showered up, got them something to eat, took them back to my house, figured out how we were going to do it, got up the next morning, okay? Came back in here shortly after 5 when it's legal again and practiced again, if I knew that situation was going to happen that night. And you know what I've learned from this too? If coming to Indiana and really looking forward to Halloween or Little 500 weekend or some other holiday or some other get-together that comes in on a college campus, if I could look at it and say, you know what, they want to come for that, all right, then they're not coming to Indiana. Now, do I think anybody just comes for that? No, I don't. But do I think it's a part of it? Yes. And if I could go back and do that over, I absolutely would. And I absolutely would. Now, steps taken right now? Absolutely. Do we do more? No question about it. Were we already doing a lot? Absolutely. And the thing about discipline and punishment, they're two different things. And punishment, a lot of times, is what you see. A suspension, or, they're up early in the morning for something, the dawn patrol or those type of things. But the discipline, the punishment and the discipline, sometimes they're ongoing. And it's internal discipline for a reason, because you're trying to keep it internal, all right? And that's why they use the word. But I've never been a big grandstander on we're doing this and we're doing that, and this isn't going to happen. Nobody can say that. I don't know what's going on right now, right? Just like you don't, nobody does, and I'm not making an excuse. We just don't, right? So we deal with it when it comes. But is everybody's attention at a place right now on issues probably where it's never been in their life? I would hope so. I would absolutely hope so. And not every one of them saw him, that time. Not everyone saw him even when he was remotely in his worst shape. But they saw enough to know. And I'm not using this as it is what it is. It's not like we have to put a picture up of him to remind anybody. So I don't know what zero tolerance means. I really don't. I know that's a nice buzzword phrase. All right, we're going to continue to do everything we can do, okay, to get decision making to improve, to get immaturity to become maturity. Does that mean that everybody's going to make it here? Well, maybe not. Okay, you don't get in this business, all right, to get rid of people when they're making progress. okay? And I've had to remove people, and I've had people that removed themselves right before I removed them so that they could save face. You know, if I've been anything as a coach that I look back and say, you know, I've got a big fault on this, I've been too forgiving of the person, okay? Too early, maybe. I mean, not necessarily forgiving of the act, but it doesn't mean that you just say, okay, that's it, you're gone. All right, because a lot of times, all right, there's some great success stories of people that have left me or people that have transferred, okay? There's also some that aren't. And when you've coached 28 years and been a head coach for 16 years, you're gonna have a lot of everything. It is what it is. So that's a long answer, and I don't wanna give long answers. I really didn't wanna come in here and do that, but that's a long answer to a question that I don't really have a great clarity. And I know everybody can have one, okay? But the bottom line is we've gotta help people grow and get better.
Zach?
Coach,
Yep.
what?
No,
I'm sorry.
Zach Osterman.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Sorry, which one?
You, Osterman.
Me,
Okay.
okay, sorry. I guess following up on that somewhat, and I apologize, I don't know how to ask this more delicately, but do you feel, I guess, a greater level of impact in the way that guys are, because of the nature of this incident this weekend, do you feel like guys are taking it more seriously, I guess? You talked about.
What would you think? I would certainly
No,
hope so. Yeah, absolutely. I don't mean that bad. I mean, I would certainly hope so. And you'd also like to think that it would never gotten to that situation. But have we, I can't give zero tolerance. Are there some things that right now, you know what? The next stories that might be getting done will be about, boy, he's a dictator and he's no fun to play with, and there'll be unnamed sources that say, you know, he's this, he doesn't let us do that. I'd much rather deal with that reputation. I'd much rather deal with that than I would to have to look at parents like I did the other night and call home and make the kids call home when we've had mistakes in the past. And I'd much rather deal with that. So, do I think they got their attention? Yeah, and you know what? We're not gonna take it for granted. It's the best answer I can give you, Zach. We're not gonna take it for granted. And it's not like we have to make a bunch of wholesale changes. We were already doing a lot of things. There's a staff of people that you surround yourself with. There's a support staff. There's life skills. There's counselors. You know, we have the medical people. And, you know, when you're at Indiana, you got the opportunity to have some of the best. You know what? And that still doesn't make it go right. You just have to keep with the message as consistent and as many times and as many different ways as you possibly can. It's like a drill. You know, you want to get better at transition defense. If you do the same drill every day, they become accustomed to the drill, okay? 5, 6, 7 different ways we can work on transition defense. Maybe we get better at it and it doesn't become so regimented. It's the same thing in discipline and communication. We just keep finding different ways to do it. You know, I mean, we had a mistake in the winter. Chris Herron, who to a man that's ever heard him, okay, and to a man, whether it's Victor Oladipo at the NBA Rookie Symposium and Cody Zeller, whether it's NFL players, whether it's the people that know him, not a more powerful speaker out there right now. And 2 nights later, Hunter Perea made a huge mistake. He was in that meeting, you know. So that's where I go. You're trying to get the message across. You say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We are. All right, Hunter sat a couple games. I'm not sure the discipline somewhere in mid-July is when we started to back it off. And the punishment and the discipline, I just didn't call a news conference to cover it all the time. And we didn't put it on message boards. We just do it. And it's the way that it is.
Jeff Brad Johnson.
I don't know if you had a chance to see some of the comments that like Jordan Holes made and Cody Zeller and those guys about what it means to play at Indiana. I think Jordan referenced, you know, wearing Indiana on your chest. They clearly inferred these guys don't get that yet. Do you feel this current group doesn't get it? And if so, how do you get that message across and get the behavior to?
Well, Jeff, I think everybody you're talking about, and I did see that yesterday, and I've seen the text that I've received from some of those that aren't public, and the texts and messages and phone calls that I've received from guys all the way back to Michigan State as an assistant, to, you know, the whole way through. Everybody has a story, okay? And everybody goes through different stages to get mature. What gets you great? Everybody goes through different stages to get to that place. And what I take from that, because of the way the program had to get built back up after the devastation that was here when we got here, is that those guys really did, all right, pay a price. Now, I'm not going to, has it been a 5-year or 5.5-year no issues in the program, that wouldn't be realistic, okay? That's not the case. But everybody learns and they grow, and that's the leadership level that you want to be there. Go ahead, Greg. Welcome to Indiana.
Thank you. You recruited all these kids, you're obviously the coach. How much responsibility is on you? How much do you feel for just this spate of events?
You know, I feel a tremendous amount. I would say this with you, okay, because I've been a fan for a long time, and that hasn't changed, not going to change. And the many reasons that you have been successful in my mind and why you're here is because you have a passion and you have an opinion, and it's very strong. And I mean that. I mean that sincerely. It's not anything to do with anything. My passion level for what my responsibilities are as high as they can possibly be. And when it doesn't go right, and when the responsibility that falls on my shoulders, and again, am I disappointed that the fans and the faithful and the community and students and whether somebody's been coming here for 50 years or getting ready to see their first game tomorrow night, am I disappointed for that? There's absolutely no question about it. Am I extremely disappointed for my family, for my coaches, for their families? No question about it. But when you do this and you feel a responsibility to the kids, you feel a responsibility to their parents. And it's not all traditional parents. It's not all, it's not all 2 parents at home, 3 kids, 3-car garage. That's not life, okay? But you feel a responsibility to them no matter who it is. And that's what gets me the most, because nobody starts coaching. I started coaching at Alma College. I made $700 in 3 years. I got paid $7,200 to be a GA at Michigan State. I made $33,000 with Ralph Willard at Western Kentucky. Okay? And those were like the unbelievable, to at those times in life to get that. You don't do this. The money those are byproducts of things. You do this because you love working with players, because you love to get them better, because you want to see them grow. And as hard as things are, when things come, people really don't surprise you. People that have a negative opinion, that doesn't really surprise you. People that are positive with you, that doesn't surprise you either. But when you hear back from the people that you go through these things with, and you know the whole story, right? You know going all the way back to a Michigan State or to Marquette and all those different places, what we all went through. And you see how they're turning out, and then you see how supportive they are, and you see how willing they are to do things, and people that would drop in the drop of a hat, okay, whether they had nothing to do with Indiana at all, that would come back here and help us do that. Well, along the way, okay, you had a good responsibility to them too. And not everything turns out great, but you keep working towards it. So in answer to your question, do I feel a responsibility? More than you, Greg, more than you can possibly imagine.
Zach?
What message are you personally feeling like you're getting from the Hoosier Nation, and what is your message back to them?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I read articles late last night. I'm not into it like you would think. I tried to follow a couple elections yesterday off Politico. I know what's going on and what's coming up news-wise. I've not really read much, but I did read some things last night. The messages that come in, the phone messages, the text, those things are phenomenal, and they've been coming for some time. That's not the focus. And it's like I said, whatever the message is, we got a lot of good things going here. So if you want a message, you know what the message is? All right, we got a 3.1 team GPA. All right, we have had guys like Derek Elston, Jordan Hulls, Austin Etherton graduated in 3 years, Matt Roth. We had guys walk out here with their masters in 4 years. Okay, we've had an APR of 1,000 for 4 years, which no one else in this league has done. We won a Big Ten championship a little over a year and a half ago, whatever it was. We went back-to-back Sweet 16s. That hadn't been done in this program in 20 years, either one of them. 20 years, okay, for a storied traditional program, one of the greatest traditions of all time. All right, we're not only turning out NBA people and the people that are playing professional, but we're turning out people that are doing some other really good things in their lives. All right, there's a lot of really, really, really good things going on. Because if there wasn't, first and foremost, I would have never been to this point, right? But if there wasn't, we wouldn't have good people coming in. We wouldn't have players that we're getting a lot of different players, okay? Some from Indiana, some from out of state. Whatever it is, you bring them in and you've got to help make them better. And you know what it is? One of the greatest things that the Hoosier Nation has, and the greatest help, that they're here, they're present, they're a part of it. And they're there, you know, when those kids are coming in and they're being recruited and they're at the games and they're buying the tickets. So is there a disappointment level? Absolutely. Do those kids all understand that? There's no way they do. And neither did any of the other ones that are, you know, Jordan Hulls might have, you know, Derek Elston, I mean, some might have, but they learn it. You know, they learn it. Nobody comes in here understanding that. And I didn't come in here understanding that. I had a pretty good idea, but I didn't come in here understanding it to that level. But I do. But as disappointed and as I feel for them, honestly, it's a lot different when I deal with families. The good news for me is a tremendous amount of family support because they know it could happen to them. They know they could have been the Davis family the other night. They know that, all right? And they know that I know that, all right? And we keep working, us forward in that. And you know what? The other thing, and maybe it'll change, but in 16 years as a head coach and being with Tom and Ralph Willard and even Ralph Penn back at Alma College, and no one ever got to the end of the year and said, you know what, you really disappointed us because you didn't do enough to them. You didn't discipline them enough. Okay, they may not have liked it. Okay, they may have thought it was too much. Nobody ever said it wasn't enough, and that's what you got to continue to build on too. Dave.
How much of this, not to pass blame, but how much of this, let's talk about leadership within the players themselves, and the fact this is a young team, maybe there isn't the senior leadership that, just because the guys are moving on and that sort of thing, isn't there right now with this program. How much of that goes on?
Well, it's a growth process, and it's certainly not growing fast enough. And that's not a newsflash for us. Okay, it's not. And for those that follow the program, it's not a newsflash for them either. But it is growing. And I know it doesn't look like that in the sense of the other night, but it's a process that you can't put if you could put a timeline on it, it'd be a lot easier. We're not doing a great job in leadership at all. Because leadership is not, leadership in one sense, in the sense of with your program, is you deal with adversity and you deal with it head on. And we've done that since we walked in and walked in here on April 2nd, April 3rd, the whole thing. I mean, we've dealt with the adversity, and you deal with your own adversity when you're a part of it, in the sense of what we deal with. So that's part of it. But leadership for a player is not just telling them to go to point A and go to point B and set this screen and that screen. All right? And leadership just isn't when they're around here. It's not when they're just around the locker room. The leadership that we've got to have, and the leadership that every high school coach, but certainly every college coach, no matter what sport it is, has got to have, wants to have, all right, is when no one is looking and when you're not around and when you're not with them in those periods of time, okay, and they are doing the right things, okay? And I'd love to tell you, you know what, we just do early morning stuff all the time. We've still had people in my past that have done something here and others, okay, where they did it in the middle of the night and we still had that early morning situation. I wish there was a timeline on that, but there's not. But do I sit here and say that our leadership is good? Absolutely not. And it's got to grow and it's got to change, and people have to grow into being leaders. But the leadership is really, you can't just put it on one or two guys. I've learned that. I mean, it's not about captains. It's not about who runs up to center circle to shake the ref's hand and shake the other team's hand. It's got to start at the beginning. Who has the courage, okay, and the conviction, all right, of their own values, but of their friendships, to say, no, we're not doing this. No, we're not going in there, all right, because ultimately, to me, and I've said this, and we're getting hurt by it again the other day. I said it back at the end of the year, okay? They think friendships are being buddies, all right? And I don't have a college athlete in my family, all right, that I may, he's 15, but I don't have a college athlete right now, my daughter Megan, okay? But at the end of the day, friendships and being buddies are on two different ends of the spectrum. Because true friendships are like comrades. They do not let you, they're not worried about the popularity of that friendship to get you to not be at the right place. The problem is, all right, in this day and age, and where we're sitting right now, we have too many people that are in the same spot. And that's what we've got to continue to outgrow. And do I feel a responsibility for that? Can't tell you how much. I really can't. And I don't know what it is. You know, I really don't, Dave. I mean, I don't, the holidays, or not the holidays, you know, the Halloweens, the little 500s, and things like that, it's what's gonna have to be. That's what's gonna have to be. But I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to pull it off every night. So we just gotta keep getting the message best we can. And when you hear back from your former people, okay, when you hear back from those parents, former parents, current parents, big time, you know it's not all falling on deaf ears, okay? And so I'm not sitting up here trying to, you know, it's not about defending or debating, I'm dealing with it, I mean, constantly. And we're on the right, we're not going to, we don't have to look at it and say, okay, we gotta make some changes here. Let's make some wholesale changes and not do this. No, we gotta make the changes that we're making even better and even sterner. But it's not, well, you know what? Let's go bring something in and try these 8 new ways to get the point across. No. Change is inevitable, okay? Change is constant. All right, and when you change something, you gotta replace something, right? And so we've gotta continue to do that. But there's never been a halftime that walked in there and said, we gotta do something different. And too many times if you wait till halftime and you don't, and too many times if you wait for the 12-minute timeout or the 8-minute timeout, that's too late. So you gotta be willing to make changes right there. And so you're always trying to assess that and do the very best you can with that, and we are.
Mike Miller.
With the suspensions, you mentioned that you have guidelines that sort of say how long maybe a player should sit. Can you just sort of explain the process you took to reach that? And then
You're gonna have to ask me more specifically, because some that I can't really talk about.
Well, with the suspensions, why start them with the exhibitions as opposed to maybe carrying them through the regular season?
Because that's part of the student athlete handbook or the mandates or whatever it is. It's no more than 50% of your, I'm not sure what it's called. What's it called?
Competition.
Yeah, but it's the preseason or something like that. It's the same for all sports in that situation. And I tacked on another one. So really with this, it's all timing. It's all about the timing of it. If this was 2 weeks from now, it wouldn't be exhibition games, Mike. Okay, if it was 4 weeks from now, it wouldn't be exhibition games. It's the timing of it. Those situations that I suspended for and tacked on to, okay, as most of you have seen, that was from this summer. That was from a situation this summer that we knew we were going to deal with when this time came. The decision to do it now, or really would have been today, I guess, you know, rather than Monday night, was certainly triggered by the fact of what happened on Friday. But the decision was made to do it at the beginning of the season and not the beginning of the school year, even though the discipline and punishment for this started at the beginning of the school year. But the other part of it, and I can't cross lines here, okay? And you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the sense of those things, but it's just the timing of it. So it really doesn't have, it's where it falls in the time of the year. And I think if you look around and you see some other people, and you can do your research on this because we see it all the time, all right, when players are missing games, it's because of the timing of the situation. And we had some mistakes made this summer that were ridiculous, okay? And this is where it's at. And I decided to add more to it because it's just another way of, you know, I'd love to say the exhibition thing, they're still not playing, okay? That's what they really, ultimately, they come here to do. They want that education, and we sell the GPA and the 3-year graduate, and if you're here 4 years, you could potentially be a master's degree holder and all those things, but they're here to play basketball. I mean, but the punishment and the discipline that goes inside of that, that's been going on for some time. And it has. And I'm not going to share that because I never really have. And I really don't want to turn into a coach that does do the grandstanding on, look at us, this is what we do. All right? And because in my history of looking at that and dealing with recruiting, it's usually not quite that way. All right? But we're dealing with it. And that's just the timing. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Bob?
Just to follow up on that, could you have gone harsher, 5 games, 6 games, 7 games? Did you have that freedom? And did you feel like you didn't want to go in that direction because you took care of discipline on the front end, the things that you can't talk about?
Yeah, I think you tie in, the adding a game was a decision based on what was already a school rule, you know, I guess, what would I say, student athlete?
Student athlete.
Yeah, I'm not sure on all the terms. Could I do more? There's punishment, there's discipline. And I keep going back to that, and that's the way it's been for a long time. And I'm not trying to compare myself to others and what they do and those type of things. But you could always, always do more, and you could always do less. And you follow what the mandates are, what the student athlete handbook says, and then you make your choice from there. You can't do any less, and I don't think I'd ever want to even consider it, but chose to do more. And in the Emmett case, it was certainly there's a punishment, there's a discipline, and there's the fact that he's living with something that I had to see that face the other night too, and that doesn't even remotely condone what he did. But those are the steps, and I confer, and I certainly, Fred really leaves it in the coach's hands, and I give it to him, and I've listened to him in the past, and I don't think he's ever looked at me and said, you know what, you're not doing enough, and I hope he never has to say that. But at the same time, he leaves it up to the coaches, and I decided to do more than what the student-athlete situation said.
Greg?
So you tacked on a game, it sounds like. You mentioned you want to do what you're doing, you want to do Sterner. Editorialize, they don't seem to be getting the message. Do you think your version of Sterner is, do you see it working?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Do I see it working the other night? Absolutely not. But I don't have a better answer for it other than we just continue to, when I say Sterner, that doesn't mean we're changing what we're doing. So, I'm not sure, am I getting your question? I'm not sure I'm answering it correctly. I'm not sure I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking you if you think, you tacked on a game, I'm just asking if you think that's really, is that window dressing so you can say you did more, or are you actually trying to change the culture? Because you've had 6 kids, you know what you've had.
We're working pretty hard at the culture, absolutely. But no, your word is window dressing, and that's fine. That's not a word that I would use, and that's certainly not anything that I see when we look at discipline or punishment. Good, Rich.
Tom, can you clarify or explain any further what Devin's injuries are and what he's dealing with right now?
I leave that to the doctors. I tried to give an update of where he's at right now, but I certainly don't want to start. We probably should get an update out here pretty quick from Dr. Rink again. So we'll do that.
Pete?
Yeah, Tom, just went very good on the question.
We can come back to you.
Okay.
Good. Good.
You mentioned feeling the responsibility
Sure.
to the parents of all these young people. Just how do you envision your role as the head coach and all the things that come along with a student athlete that's not out there on the court?
Well, I think when you build the relationships with them that you do in recruiting, and I think when you go over the period of time with them, I think you not only build the relationship with the player, but you certainly with their families, and it's part of it. And I think is certainly when you grow in your own world as a parent, you feel it that much more, especially when they get to that age. It's just part of it. So you try to give them the good, you try to give them the bad, you try to keep them involved in the situation, you try to get them to talk to them at times, okay? And at the same time, they have to trust you that you're doing the right thing, for them, or they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be here, and they wouldn't let them come. So that's the bottom line with that. I think as much as anything, as we try to really work in that way.
Mike Merritt?
Tom, as you try and change the culture, you talked about Sterner being Sterner and that sort of thing. How do you try and do that moving forward? Is it the message? Is it recruiting different kinds of guys?
When I say Sterner, let me clarify Sterner, because maybe I didn't do a very good job with that. I don't curse anymore, okay? That ended a few years back. I don't have to. It's not about how much anger you bring them, okay? You have to. Sterner sometimes may mean, okay, we've got to take more away, all right? We've got to bring more to this that gets their attention. See, Sterner's okay, how do we get the attention? And how do we get it again and again and again? And that's what it is. Does it mean I have to yell louder? No, I'm not big on grandstanding that part of it either, okay? Everybody has, people can define, well, they have to do this, they have to do that, it has to be this, okay? We've had a lot of people come through the program in 16 years as a head coach that that have dealt with Stern, okay, and they've ended up pretty good, and bottom line. But I think you just have to continue to get their attention any way possible. And I think you keep, the culture here, you keep building it. I mean, because constantly, as anybody can attest to, you know, from before, it can go quick. So you have to work at it extremely hard. All right, and it can go on the court, it can go in the locker room, it can go off the court, it can go so many different ways. Culture is a moving target. All right, it's not a definition. It's not a, hey, this is what it looks like everywhere. It's a moving target, and you've got to continue to build on that constantly, and that's what we're trying to do.
Mike?
You mentioned the other night that you were coming from walk-on tryouts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect to add anybody?
Well, we had scheduled that from before, and I went into it with an open mind, and I still do. So we haven't made any decisions on that at all yet. No.
Got time for a couple more. Pete?
Yeah, I remember the question, so sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
When you're recruiting kids, how hard is it to really know if they're good leaders, if they're mature? Because obviously if you have kids that don't do this, you don't have to deal with it. So how hard is it to really know them well enough so that you know whether they're capable of something?
Well, you don't, because no matter what, I mean, we recruited at a young age. I mean, but no matter what, you don't know them in that way. You don't know anybody until you get around them on a constant basis. I mean, you just don't. So, but I'm not putting it on that. I mean, you just have to keep working constantly. You deal with it head on. You try to get to know them the best you can. You try to get to know what makes them tick. You have to find those buttons. You have to find out how you get them. There's a lot of things in the world. There's a lot of things at their age that are prying for their attention, for their affection, for their connection. You know, whatever you want to call it. And you got to keep working constantly to get that. You got to keep working constantly to fill voids. You know, it's not like the void, if there is a void, okay? It's not like a void. I don't mean a family void. Sometimes that happens, but we've got some great families. So bottom line is you've got to keep entrusting, and they've got to make the best choices. It really comes down to that. You know, how do you keep making the best choices when it's really, really easy to make the wrong one? And how do you get to the point where you understand that it not only affects you and your teammates, but your family and your program and people that care about you and people that follow you and all those different things? You know, that's the bottom line. I mean, you want them to get to that point, and it just takes time to get there. Some you know better than others, but at the same time, you coach every one of them to get them to that point where they can be very good decision makers. And you just keep working at it constantly. And I wish there was certainly, it's the old coin, there's no blueprint for it, there's no book for it, there's not. I wish there was. Wish there had been one for the other night. Wish there had been one to get everybody to do the right thing. I mean, there wasn't. So you just keep working it to the best of your ability. And I'm confident in all the things that we're doing to get it to that point, and we'll continue to do it.
Okay, last question.
Got a lot of experience in working at it, a lot of it.
Tom?
Yes, Joe?
Practice into play now. Where's this team going into these two exhibitions? What will you be focusing in on offensively, defensively, from how the kids have practiced to day now transfer?
Well, I think the big thing will be the ball movement. I think ball movement on offense and the spacing and keeping it on the attack with it. I think how we get back in transition, you know, what our communication's like in that. And you know, continue to build into the help defense, them going through real life situations of playing against other people, and which you know, they did some in Montreal. That's been a while. So when we get to that part of it, and defensively, really start to see where we're at rebounding wise right now. You know, not get caught up. Okay, we don't have these guys and all that. You know, we play a lot of different lineups anyways. Let's just go. Let's just go and play. And start to get that stuff down. I'm glad we've got two exhibitions back to back, you know, with this before we get started, because then it starts real quick for us.
Zach, you had one more about the game?
Yeah, I guess just sort of a twofold question about the game. One, is Colin available? And two,
He is available.
How do you handle, when you've got so many guys that aren't available, how are you going to handle kind of having such a short bench?
Well, we'll just deal with it. I mean, I don't have a magic answer to that too, you know, and we're going to play to get better. We're also going to play to win the game. And I like this team that we're getting ready to play against. They've got some Division I transfers. Maurice Jones was a very good player at USC, and double-figure score there. Myers is good. King is good. King can really shoot. Lang and Cable can shoot. They're well coached in the sense that they're going to do a lot of different things and play hard. So we just deal with it the best that we can. I'm excited about it to play. I mean, I know they are too. But at the same time, it's not like any of what we're dealing with Devin or any of those things are going to go away. But I think everybody will be excited to play basketball. And will they be at their best? That's not what's relevant, okay? Will they be at their best that they can be tomorrow? That's what is relevant.
Okay, Coach.
Yeah, and moving forward, I mean, I'd like, if anybody, as we get into the games tomorrow night and stuff like that, I'll try to give you Devin updates. I'd like to keep it as centered as possible on basketball and the future of the basketball, okay? Unless there's something out there that comes up that we have to deal with, but any other thing? We good right now? Go ahead, Rich.
Well,
I don't mind.
You are starting the season. How do you feel like this has impacted the team?
Well, we'll see. There's a lot going on right now. I mean, they're spending a lot of time at the hospital. They're spending a lot of time with their teammate. And when people look at it and say, well, are they that close? Because they're extremely close. And those things happen. Sometimes they don't pull each other out of the. They make mistakes together, right? But it's, you can imagine, how real it is to be up there seeing your teammate, and I don't think there's one kid that wouldn't look at it, whether they were around, whether they were close with Devin, whatever it is, that can't put themselves in that same situation. And what I see is not only them in that same situation, but is their families having to see that situation, and they're there for that. But it's been, we've been together an awful lot, and since Friday, and that's just part of it. So it's when you say that it's a process, that's where we absolutely have to stay true to the fact that it is a process, and that they're going through a lot of different emotions. They're young people. They're very young people, and they don't get a pass on that. I'm not giving them an excuse on that, but they're very young people. And so they're dealing with a lot of emotions and a lot of things that they have never seen. And it is what it is. Mistakes aside, it is what it is.
Quick clarification, did you say that there would be more early morning workouts as a result of this, or any kind of
I didn't say that. I said if I could go back and do it again. I said if I could go back and do it again the other night, I'd have had him in there until midnight. All right, we'd have got some sleep, we'd have come right back in, and then I would have never let him out of my sight. Not sure that's realistic, but that's what I'd have done. So, can I do that every night? I don't know, but it's where we're at.
Okay. Thank you, Coach.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.